So have you ever gone through one of those moments in those times where you had a bunch of questions, where you wondered if God was really there, if God really answers, if God really listens, if God is really at work? Maybe you had a time in your life when, you didn't get the girl or the guy, when you didn't get the promotion, when you got some tragic news, or when you had to deal with a loss. I know I've been there. Yeah, it's natural to have those questions as we go through difficult times in our life. I remember a couple years after Andrea and I, for a while, we weren't able to have children, and we were praying for it, and there was a Sunday that Andrea was coming off. She had done announcements for the service, and she was coming off, and afterwards, Angie came up to me. We were both serving in the same ministry, and Angie came up to me, and she has this gift. You might think this is weird, but she has a gift of prophecy, and she said, "Andrea's pregnant." And Andrea and I looked at each other, and I have to admit, we kind of laughed. Really? Yeah, right. Okay. And yet 2 weeks later, we find out she was pregnant, and we were ecstatic. But 2 months later, she had a miscarriage once again, and we were crushed. It was one of those times where, like, okay, God, why? I mean, come on. I mean, it would be enough if we just weren't pregnant, but then to, take us through this roller coaster, have somebody even tell us we're pregnant? Well, why? What? I don't get it. Then I remember a Sunday, it was a pretty powerful service, and afterwards I was greeting people, and there was this new man who came through, and he looked pretty emotional, and so I asked if he wanted to talk, and we went off to the side, and we talked for over an hour. Find out he had come to church to make peace with God because he was going to go home and he was going to take his life. Really. And so we prayed and we talked and we worked through all these things. And then finally we went to his car, and I got his means and his method. And then a friend of mine and I, we took him to get some professional help. And over the next couple of weeks, it was pretty amazing. We were able to be his support system as he was going through a process and helping himself get right and be okay. And it was pretty amazing how we could see how God was working in a mighty way. And then one night, I get a phone call. He said, I just wanted to call and say goodbye. And I'm like, hey, wait. And he hung up. And so I called him, and I called him, and I called him, and then I got in my car, and I started going to try to find him everywhere I knew to go look. And I would look. And finally, 45 minutes later, he calls me back, and he agrees finally to meet with me in a parking lot. And it was rainy, cold, windy day, and it was at night. And so I went and got my friend, and we came up to his car, and he's like, well, it's bad weather. Get back in your car and just pull up right next to me. And we agreed, and then we found out why. He had a gun in his lap. So we prayed with him and talked with him and asked him questions and prayed again. And then he goes, will you do me one more favor? Will you pray the Lord's Prayer? Sure, we'll pray the Lord's Prayer. And so we start praying the Lord's Prayer. In the middle of the prayer, he raises the gun up and he cocks it, and we stop. And we're like, no, man, this is not the answer. No, you can't do this. And I can still hear the shot ring out as he took his life. I mean, talk about a time when you're like, what? God, are you working? I mean, what? Are you listening? This doesn't make sense. This is not how it's supposed to be. This is not how it's supposed to work out. And then all of a sudden I find myself with the police, filing reports. And they asked me to go with them to see his wife and his 2 young boys. Spent the majority of that evening with them. And the next few weeks were completely ministering to a whole bunch of people, friends and family that I have never met in my entire life. And for the next year, our little small church, we were the support system for this single mom and 2 kids as they were going through a horrific time in their life until they moved closer to where they were from. And all of a sudden, out of tragedy, you could see how God works in some kind of way. I mean, in the midst of the evil and the tragedy and all, God was still working through it all. This morning, we come to a moment in the movement where Paul and his entourage must have had those questions of, okay, God, are you really working? Are you really listening? Are you really still there? I mean, we've seen you work, and we've seen you answer a lot of prayers, but we wonder once again if you're really there. And yet what they see is time and time again, no matter what they face, God still works. The movement still moves. So let's dive in. If you got a Bible or your phone, you can go to Acts chapter 16, which is where we're going to dive in. We, over the last few months, have been in this series called The Movement. We're diving in this book of Acts, and we're seeing this movement that Jesus began as he came and he said, you know, I'm going to fix all that's broken between you and God. I'm going to step in the middle. I'm going to lay down my life in your place. Because we've unpacked the fact that it's not on us. It can't be on us, because if it's on us, we're out of luck. Because we, in our brokenness, our sin, in our total mess, we can't do anything to fix what's broken between us and God. Only Jesus can come and fix what is broken between us. And then, yet, Jesus uses people like us, broken, messed up, sinful, real, everyday people like us. People who have a story of how grace has impacted us. People who have experienced that grace. And that's how he continues his movement to save more and more people. So we studied how the movement works in the book of Acts, but how the movement also works in our life today, in our world today. Now, if you were with us last week, you might recall that the church of that time came together to have a great debate where the likes of Paul and Peter came together to make their case that, you know what, we have to stop putting hurdles and hoops for people to jump through. We have to stop making it my way. We have to stop saying, hey, it's about this tradition or this ritual or about this thing I do or how I look or something like that. It's only about Jesus, just Jesus, nothing more. Chapter 15 ends after the debate with Paul heading out on his second missionary journey, and where we pick it up today in chapter 16, verse 16, he is already well on that missionary journey, and he's in the town of Philippi, which the letter of Philippians is for. Let's start at verse 16. Once when I'm going to stop here real quick, sorry. I won't stop all the time, but there is, the third word right here is a new word. We haven't seen it in all of Acts yet. Well, actually 6 verses earlier it comes in. It's the pronoun we. You don't see it anywhere else. All of a sudden, finally, we find out that Luke, the writer of Acts, has now joined Paul and Timothy and Silas. He's a part of it. He's living this out, okay? He's there. So once, when we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a female slave who had a spirit by which she predicted the future. She earned a great deal of money for her owners by fortune-telling. She followed Paul and the rest of us, shouting, "These men are servants of the Most High God, and they're telling you the way to be saved." She kept this up for many days. Finally, Paul became so annoyed, he turned around and said to the spirit, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you, come out of her." And at that moment, the spirit left her. So this woman, she had this gift, kind of like my friend Angie, of prophesying, of being able to tell the future. Now, I get it. We're good Lutherans. We don't believe in that. right? We want to reconcile everything and make sure it's really logical and it doesn't fit into our tight little box about. Guess what? It's biblical. Guess what? Sometimes God works in ways that are a little out of our comfort zone. Guess what? No, my friend Angie wasn't Facebook stalking me when she shared some of these things with me. So what we realize is that there's this whole spiritual going on, good, bad, demons, angels around us. There's a whole spiritual warfare that's going on. And so we have to realize that's happening around us more than what we'd like to know. So as a woman, she has this gift to be able to tell the future for people. She has this gift not because of God, but because of a demon. She's demon-possessed. And her owners are using it to make lots and lots of money. Yet what we find out in the Bible is, especially with Jesus, but also even with Paul and Peter, is that when demons are around Jesus, the presence of Jesus, or what Jesus is doing, oftentimes they can't help themselves but testify. And so, at least in my head, I got this weird idea of this woman that's kind of weird. She's going around, men of God they are, they're men of God. You want to be saved? They know how to save you, men of God. Listen to them. Weird. Or biblically, it says annoying, right? That would be annoying if that happened for day after day, this weird lady following you. And so eventually Paul just turns around and goes, enough! In the name of Jesus, get out! And the demon flees. But there's a problem here. The owners are not so happy. Look at verse 19. When her owners realized that their hope of making money was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace to face the authorities. And they brought them before the magistrates and said, these men are Jews and they're throwing our city into an uproar by advocating customs unlawful for us Romans to accept or to practice. The crowd joined in the attacks against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten with rods. And after they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. So they're stripped and beaten with rods and thrown into prison. Scripture goes on and says that their feet were fastened in stocks. Talk about a season of wondering and questioning. Okay, God, I know you've been working. We've experienced how you've been working, but we don't see it right now. What's up with this? 18 years ago, Angie and her family, they moved from Texas where we were serving. Angie had been a huge influence on both Andrea and myself. She's an influence on quite a number of people, but we were one of those people that didn't believe in prophecy or anything like that, but she had shared with us things from God that we then saw over and over again God carry to completion. She's influenced us pretty significantly over the last couple of decades as we continue a close relationship, and she's an example of faithfully following Jesus. She's one of the most significant reasons I actually went back to seminary to become a pastor. She's actually one of the reasons that an influence that I made the decision to come here to Indianapolis. So she's a friend and one of those spiritual mentors of sorts, I would say, in my life. One of those people God has used her and Zach, her husband, in a mighty way to impact us and so many other people. So we have this relationship, and a couple years ago she reached out to me and she wanted to share with me some pretty tough news. She found out her baby girl, 27 years old at the time, Amber, who 20 years earlier was in my youth ministry, or 20 years ago was in my youth ministry as a junior hire. She just got diagnosed with cancer, and it was serious. Now, Angie, she's a rock, but that kind of news will rock anyone, won't it? Especially if it's your baby and you're not sure how it's all going to work out. And So she shared this with me, and I kept it, and I want to share it with you. This a couple years ago. She said, "My tears are not a sign that I'm not trusting God. My tears are a sign of a mother's grief. God can heal her if He chooses. Otherwise, we're still going to trust Him. I thank the Lord that He has given me the faith to be at this point. At first, I didn't think I could bear this trial, but He has given me His strength." Angie has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. In fact, go to Dark Gethsemane. When somebody sings it, I still hear it in her voice. And so when I even look at these words now, I picture her, tears in her eyes, praying and praising a God that she knows is there, a God that she rests in. Even in the season. That's where Paul and Silas are. I mean, in a season where they must have wondered and questioned. I mean, they just got beaten to a pulp. And yet, look at what happens, verse 25. About midnight, Paul and Silas are praying and singing hymns of God to God. And the other prisoners were listening to that. They have just experienced this moment where they're like, okay, God, you could have come and helped us out. We just cast out a demon. I mean, we were doing good things. Why did you allow us to have to deal with this? They were singing praises to God. We don't see how you're working, but we know you're working, God. Suddenly, there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and at once all the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword. He was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped, but Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself, we're all here." The jailer called for the lights and rushed in and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He then brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" They replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved, you and your household." Wow, God showed up big time and worked even in the midst of all of this. He worked in a powerful way. And that night, Paul and Silas, they were able to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Not only to the jailer and his family, but all these prisoners. And we don't know what happens with the prisoners, but I can only imagine what happens with the prisoners. People were saved that night, even in the midst of being thrown in jail and having chains and being beaten. Even in the midst of the tough and the disappointing, God works. Do you know that God works even when there's hurt and there's tragedy in your life, there's mistakes that you have made, even with the setbacks, even if it's hard? Guess what? You know what? I believe us Christians here in America, we think that life should just be easy. God, just make it easy. Why don't you make it easy? There are going to be times when it's not easy. There are going to be times when you question. There's going to be times when you wonder. But that doesn't change the fact that God is still the God of the universe, and He can use whatever it is for His glory. He can use whatever it is for His will and His purpose, even the bad. And that doesn't mean that He caused it. No, it doesn't mean that He willed it. It doesn't mean that He's behind it. No, it means that we live in a sinful, broken, messed up world. We're sinful, broken, messed up people. That's what it means. But God can still use it. He can still use it. A week ago, I got a phone call I got a text from a good friend, Robert, who called me and said, "Hey, you got a few minutes, we can talk." He knew I was home hanging out with my family for a little while, and Robert's wife is Maria, and Maria is a good friend of mine. For a number of years, she served on our board at my church back in Little Rock and was a partner in ministry, just a great friend. They moved 4 years ago. She got a great opportunity in Georgia, and as they were moving, actually on the trip, something wasn't right, and she went straight to the hospital when she got there, and they found out she had cancer. And the last 4 years have been a horrible fight with cancer. In fact, it had gotten so bad that just a couple months ago, they moved back to Little Rock near family and friends in their church home because that's where they needed to be. And so Robert, he called because he had just taken Maria to the hospital and he didn't know if he was going to get to pick her up again. Now Maria, she has this beautiful, amazing attitude in Jesus. I mean, the tears come. Tears about, Robert and grandkids and kids and that, yes, tears come, but she's like, I'm at peace. It's okay. I'm ready. Whether I live or whether I die, God used my story. An attitude just like Amber had. Sadly, Amber, she was just in the first year of marriage. Married a pastor down in Georgia. She passed away. But in her life and in her death, God used her story in a mighty way. God can use your story in a mighty way, no matter what your story. Even if you're like, yeah, but I'm kind of a mess up. I'm not sure he could really love me. He could still really use me. Yeah, he can use your story. I'm kind of worn out and weary. I don't know if he really listens to me. Yep, he does, and he can use your story. Well, I'm kind of bored and disengaged. I don't know if he. Yes, he can use your story because you're his child. And he's your God. And so whatever you're facing, whatever you go through, you don't have to freak out. You don't have to be fearful because you are his child. Take a look at this.
Every story has a beginning, and I don't know where this really begins, except I know in May the 19th, 1970, I came home to Jesus after a rock and roll career and lots of smoking dope, and come home to my wife, and she forgave me for 3.5 years of unfaithfulness, and we began to follow Jesus. And it was hard, it was trying, it was beautiful, but in 1976, something happened that wrecked my heart, my life. She had made several trips to the physician, her gynecologist, her female doctor, and he said, Linda, there's some problems. The long and short was she had cancer of the uterus, and what was necessary was to have a hysterectomy, a surgery to remove all the female organs. I wasn't so concerned about that because we had 2 daughters and we had enough, and I didn't want any more children anyway because I figured some of the drugs I did, why risk having a child deformed? And 2 weeks before the scheduled hysterectomy, a prophetic man, because back in those days, in the 70s, nobody was known as a prophet. But a very prophetic man called me and said, I need to see you. Something happened that's life-changing. He would go to a baseball field where there was some swings, kind of a playground, and he would go there in the evening and intercede. Retired school teacher, he prayed. He said, last night I was on a baseball field and Jesus just suddenly appeared in front of me. I've never had that happen before. I was shocked, and the Lord said, it's okay, Kermit, but I have a message I want you to tell my servant, Ken Helson. I want you to tell him first, I've healed his seed, and I have never told anybody the reason I didn't even want any more children is I was concerned about the drugs I did. And here's a man that I barely had known only one other time saying, Jesus said, I've healed your seed. And you're going to have a son. And his name will be Jonathan David. And he will play the harp. He will sing like an angel. And he will write prophetic songs for his generation. And his music will go out all over the earth. Now, when you're 2 weeks from hysterectomy, that's dramatic. And I said, God, is this you? And it grew in my heart, and I never knew I wanted a son so badly. And in a short amount of time, my wife and I are praying and telling the gynecologist, can you do one more test? On a Sunday, I anointed her with oil, prayed for her, and it wasn't dramatic. But during that prayer, my wife touched the hem of Jesus' garment. On Friday, with a scheduled hysterectomy on Monday, they did a D&C, and that's when they go in and scrape the womb. The test came back on Saturday, and when the doctor came down the hall whistling, we said, that's a good sign. He stuck his head in the door and said, the pathologist is baffled. He's consulted me 3 times, saying this is not the same woman. Ken, your wife is 200% okay. We got pregnant with a little boy who was named Jonathan David. And he was all boy. He never showed any interest in music. He just loved to play sports. I don't care if it was a ball, he was into it. But at 19 years of age, graduating from high school, he came in my room one night and he said, Daddy, didn't you used to play guitar? See, we never told him the whole thing. We told him, God healed your mommy, we had a baby. We didn't tell him what he was going to be doing with her. Did you used to play guitar? Can you teach me some chords? And so we sent him off to Nuneaton, YWAM in England with a guitar and a Bible. I came to visit him in November. And on the last night before we were returning home, some of the kids said, you should hear some of Jonathan's worship. I said, Jonathan, I got a little cassette we play, and I know your sisters love to hear you. You're playing guitar better. He said, yeah, play a song, Daddy. And he played the song, and I went, oh my gosh, who wrote that? And he said to me now, he says, I'll never forget the look on your face because you had waited 19, well really 20 years for a word of a prophet to become reality. We will dance in your palace all our days. We'll sing in your temple with all our praise. We'll shout down the walls in the name of your Son because we will overcome. We will overcome. I said, Jonathan, you wrote that. I said, the first song you wrote is the prophecy of your entire life. My generation, the 60s, the hippies, we threw away our inheritance. We wasted what God gave us. It's your generation to take back what my generation destroyed. You're going to take back the land, and you're going to do it through the power of worship. And so it is that here I am, 71 years old, and it used to be, oh, Jonathan David, Ken Helser's your daddy. No more. You're Jonathan David's daddy? Oh, that can't be. I just say, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
Powerful story, isn't it? I mean, a story that's filled with sadness and brokenness and mess ups, but a story that's overwhelmed by Jesus. Yeah, maybe you can tell that that was his son who's singing that song. And so as he tells his story, his son is singing the song, one of my favorite songs, a song that has reached all over the world. There's churches that sing that song, people that sing that song about where we stand before God. That we no longer have to be slaves of fear, but because we are a child of God. So I don't know if you've been praying that prayer year after year with any kind of answer or not. I don't know if you've just found out that somebody that you love near you has been diagnosed, or you've experienced a time when somebody has been healed. I don't know if you've come across tragedy in your life, or stress in your life, or loss in your life, or you're right now celebrating joys or celebration. What I do know is that you are a child of God, the God of the universe that has created all things and is in control of all things, even as it seems totally out of control. A God of the universe who loves you and has sent his son, Jesus, to come and win you back. So even though you might have to go through this life that has some struggles, and it does, you would know without a shadow of a doubt you are a child of God. You would know how it all ends. You would hold on to these words in Romans 8. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I'm convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth nor anything else in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.